Hello. I didn't have a question today, and so I didn't really know what I was going to channel on when I went into my meditation. So I meditate before I channel. Every time I meditate, and then I come out of the meditation and immediately push record and start channeling. Usually before I go into my meditation, I have a question that I'm going to go with. Today I didn't. And during the meditation, I kind of got this, let's talk about the collapse of the false matrix. Which is a relief, because I didn't know what I was going to channel on today, so I'm glad that this popped in. So it seemed to me they were giving it to me. They were saying, right, this is what they wanted to speak about. Let's talk about the collapse of the false matrix. Depending on how long you've been following me now, you may have seen me do a lot of channels. At the beginning of every channel, still, I have this feeling that, which could be described as, I hope there is something that comes through about this which is actually worthwhile. I still have that feeling, because I still kind of feel like, what the heck am I gonna, what the heck is gonna come out, you know? Is there gonna be something there? Am I gonna draw a blank? That's kind of my fear. At the beginning of every channel, that's kind of how you distill it. At the beginning of every channel, my fear is, man, am I actually going to have something to say on this, or is it just going to be drawing a blank? Almost always something comes through. A couple of times, you know, it's been a bit rough having something come through to say. So I'm about to speak on, let's talk about the collapse of the false matrix. And the reason I've brought this up about this sort of apprehension is because this isn't my question, or isn't a question that I had prior to, so I'm feeling that apprehension a little bit more than usual, I guess you could say. Rightio. But if my brother was here, he'd be saying, stop it! Stop it! Just trust yourself. Okay. So let's talk about the collapse of the false matrix. And see what we got. Greetings, and thank you for agreeing to channel today on a topic which we have offered as the subject matter. Let's discuss the collapse of the false matrix. Let's begin by defining what is meant by the false matrix. On planet Earth, in regions which are plugged into the global story, there is being fed through these channels, which you could say connect societies into the global story, a false story, a misrepresentation of what truly is, because those that are the source into which communities are plugged have as their agenda control, authority, accumulation of wealth, and suppression of any challenge to this position which they feel entitled to through the virtue of being an elevated form of humanity. Your access to information, therefore, is highly controlled and not reflective of reality in any way, except, of course, to be consistent with the physical, chemical, and so on laws of your planet and the way the 3D matrix manifests here. All else is a contrivance in servitude to this agenda of maintaining the strated system, which is essentially defined into two main stratas on the planet. Those that control and accumulate wealth, authority, and power, and everyone else. For many, the degree to which this false matrix is engineered would be incomprehensible, because so skillfully has it been done that for those that do not seek to read between the lines, it seems to be impeccable. It seems to be so acceptable as a true reflection of what is occurring that they do not even entertain the possibility of falsity, and instead consume it with the wide-eyed innocence that a child consumes the information they receive unquestioningly from their parents. Humanity has evolved to believe in the community narrative. This is a evolutionary artifact which has been beneficial to the continued prosperity of a society, to be unified in their purpose to create security, prosperity, and connectiveness, which culminates as a successful society, which is abundant in resources for all those who participate and able to provide the security to maintain the prosperity, and also a culture which enriches the people and maintains a level of life satisfaction and joy which invigorates the people to maintain this working system. In this organic structure which we just described, those that are at the level of decision making, who are the originators and disseminators of the narrative in many aspects, particularly those which are most influential in the direction of the society, feel a connectedness to all those who are just the regular men, women and children of this community. So they are true leaders in the sense that they are like the benevolent shepherd that wishes only that their flock is as prosperous and joyful and secure as possible. And those within the community, it is in the benefit of harmony and continuation of this model if they are accepting of the narrative. And there is no reason not to be accepting of the narrative, to believe the information that is disseminated, because through this organic model, those that are injecting this information into the society, which then is disseminated through conversations, through meetings and so on, prior to the establishment of media, do so with the intent to love, nurture and further the elevation of the society, including all those that willingly participate and integrate into this cohesiveness. So the human being is hard-coded to be very accepting of the narrative because of this organic origins. However, over time, there has been the separation in self-identification between those who are at the upper strata. They, over generations, have increasingly perceived themselves as entitled in a way which are those who at the lower strata are not. And bundled with this sense of entitlement is a self-identification that they and their peers, those that on this strata with them, are a higher form of humanity. And so it is within their right, with full justification, to behave in a way which creates a prosperity for them which will never be enjoyed by those they see as being on the lower strata, even to the point of creating suffering and debilitation in this lower strata as the means through which they elevate themselves. It could be said they have been seduced by darkness. This philosophy of being an elevated, more deserving, rarefied form of humanity is a philosophy into which they were seduced by opportunists that came into the Earth Human Project to convert the human field into a resource. And when they arrived, they saw this propensity across the human field to be this strated system, where there are those who were the upper level, the decision makers, who up until this time had been deciding in a way which was for the good of all. And the narrative was highly reflective of the truth of the reality which all shared. However, these upper levels were infiltrated by the opportunists, and through a seductive philosophy and an superior intellect and sophistication and access to technology and so on, they were able to convince these upper levels that it was their entitlement to enjoy a level of power, authority, and prosperity which was beyond what had been experienced before. And also that the diminishment of those underneath was a necessary consequence for those who were entitled to reap all that will elevate them to what they were seduced into believing is their rightful place. For this to be done without the lower strata having an awareness which would result in revolution, which would result in a pushback that would crumble the empire of those at the upper level, the science of mass manipulation through false narrative was developed. The opportunists have remained, in the most part, hidden. They operate from a place of darkness, and it is the way of darkness to be as imperceptible as possible, to operate from the shadows, to wield influence, to bring about significant change without those who are subject to the change being aware. This is their preferred method of operation, and also, in a sense, it is their personal challenge. It is with satisfaction that they wield such great authority without being known. Their sense of accomplishment is closely connected to the degree to which they remain secret. And so, as a form of personal challenge, they increasingly inject their symbology into the society which they are engineering and being consumed by those on the lower strata, with the objective of being increasingly present while staying unknown, unseen. It is you could say, the sport of darkness. So, these opportunists that entered the Earth paradigm to create this scenario which necessitated the false narrative, the false matrix. Even for many of those who are on the upper strata, do not have an appreciation that the opportunists are there, and the opportunists for a long time have been manipulating and directing them to increased prosperity for themselves, yet done through a modality of influence which they themselves are not aware of. So in a sense, they have been inspired telepathically. They have been chosen and immersed into a dark energy field because they demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice the light, to extinguish the light for their own advancement and elevation and consolidation of their power, authority, and wealth. So there are many who are engineering the narrative from this place of darkness without realizing that they are being influenced by the darkness from afar through the capacities of these opportunists, which are not yet expressed in the earth human. And so the earth human does not have an awareness that this is so. However, there are also some which are in direct communication with the opportunists and their allies and are implementing these strategies which are offered as guidance and in many cases directives from the opportunists, working as underlings to the opportunists to engineer and maintain this two-strata system such that on a global scale there is mass suffering, hardship, disease, desperation, anxiety, fear, anger, collectively described as expressions of darkness, because this expression of darkness is harvested by those we are calling the opportunists. This energy, this dark energy, which people who are toxified through darkness, is a harvestable resource by the opportunists and their allies. So, the opportunists and their allies, these are actual beings. So, they are beings with a physical form that could be described as alien beings, and also there's some allies which could be described as interdimensional, who collectively they have a similarity, which is harvesting darkness as a resource. So, let us briefly describe how darkness is harnessed as a resource. Darkness is a form of power. Now let us exemplify this. If you have dueling urban gangs who are fighting for territory to sell their illicit substances, logically we can see the gang which is more willing to go into darkness to maintain their power, authority and accumulation of wealth will, if all other things are equal, will prevail. So, if one gang who are less conversant with darkness, less willing to go into darkness, decide that they are going to maintain their territory by being physically violent, to give a beating to any person that attempts to encroach into their territory to distribute their own illicit substance without the permission of this gang. So they may decide, whenever they see this occur, they will go to this insurgent and give them a beating as a lesson to never come back. And so, in their region, they are the only ones who are willing to be this violent to maintain their position. And so, that expression of darkness is instrumental to them maintaining their position as the top dog, the number one. Yet, a new gang enters the region, and this new gang, they are willing to not only beat but also murder if they find somebody in their territory, which they are now claiming from this other gang. They will murder them. And this original gang, they're not willing to commit murder, and so they have been overcome by this new rival gang who are willing to go deeper into darkness. Their willingness to go deeper into darkness is the source of their power, and why they now dominate this region at the exclusion of the gang who used to own this territory. And then another gang comes in, and they are willing to commit murder, but not only commit murder of their rivals, but also of their rivals' families, of their rivals' children, of their rivals' parents, friends, relatives. And so, this gang that were willing to murder their rivals are unwilling to include women, children, elderly in this equation. And so, they retreat, and this territory is again transitioned into the ownership of a new gang who are willing to go deeper, yet still into darkness. And so it is their willingness to go into darkness which is their power. So, if we continue this example, eventually you will arrive at a place through logical extrapolation where those that dominate the planet because they are willing to send entire countries into war, resulting in the death of millions creating orphans from millions of children, devastating entire countries that would take decades to recover from, millions dying from starvation, forced relocation, and so on and so on. Those who are willing to go to that extent to be the most dark on the entire planet are those who wield the most power and the most authority. It is their darkness that gives them this power, their potency of darkness. The most dark makes them the most powerful. And so, this darkness is very tangible. And to beings that understand the power of darkness, it can be, in a very real way, harvested and utilized as a form of power. When a group which, let us say, on this planet has been referred to as the Cabal or the Illuminati, they understand that their power is the receipt of their darkness. They realize and understand that their potency of darkness is what has elevated them to this place of power, authority, and wealth, and maintains it. And of course, they have challengers who wish also to be the world's most powerful, with authority and wealth, the megalomaniacs of the earth human field. And so, understanding also that the power is in the darkness, they are willing to also go to a very deep level of darkness to bring forward their challenge of usurping those who sit at the very pinnacle of wealth, power, and authority on planet Earth. And these people who reign at the very top, they exist above nations. They exist above laws. They are beyond the reach of the methods which curtail the expression of darkness in the lower strata. They are answerable to no one. And understanding that these who are the most powerful, they understand that they have challenges, and they understand that their challenges realize the tangible power that comes from the potency of their darkness. And so, these Cabal, Illuminati, ritualize the production and harvesting of darkness to maintain their power. They understand that living everyday life just with the idea that I am a dark being, that I am willing to be evil, is insufficient to maintain their authority at this pinnacle of power, stemming from this accumulation, willingness to have a potent darkness, is insufficient when you have competitors that are of the same mindset but willing to increase the capacity to carry the darkness by ritualizing their darkness creation. So, those that are at the pinnacle, they are a religion in a sense, where they have ritualized manifestation of darkness to harvest into themselves, to maintain a level of power stemming from potent darkness that cannot be challenged, because there is no other group on the planet that can generate darkness to the same potency, the same power. So, over centuries, they have developed an art, which is their religion, of creating darkness for harvesting. And not just harvesting, but also as offering, which we will discuss momentarily. So, to harvest darkness, needing this ritualized process to first create the darkness for harvesting, it requires atrocity. It requires the darkest actions that can be conceived within the realm of what it means to be a human being, so that they can create a dark energy for their harvest. They need so much dark energy to remain at the pinnacle, to hold off the challenges, to remain secure in their position at the pinnacle, that they religiously ritualize the creation of darkness frequently as an ongoing process. In a sense, it could be said to be analogous or metaphoric of charging a rechargeable battery. They have to continue to up and maintain the charge of darkness they carry. And over centuries, this has developed as a religion and as an art form, where they have become incredibly proficient at creating a darkness of a high potency in a short amount of time through these ritualized ceremonies. Unfortunately, sadly, the methods which are most heinous, which are most dark, which are most expressive of the ultimate darkness that a human can generate within the human field, involves those who are most innocent. The more innocent is the receptacle which they incorporate into their ritualized generation of darkness, then with the greatest efficiency and the greater the yield of the darkness that they can harvest. And so, the most innocent are the young, the children, those that are still not plugged into the matrix, and so haven't been toxified with the darkness and the suffering. And so they are very pure in their innocence. And this purity of innocence is synonymous with being a potential of intense darkness harvesting. So on your planet now, there is an industry, and this industry is the farming of, and also the abducting of children. Innocents, young and unaware, for the purpose of being made to suffer in ways which are inhumane, incomprehensible to the average person, for the generation of darkness to be harvested by those who wish to maintain their position at the very top. So there is a literal industry for this purpose, and that industry serves those that maintain their position at the very top, and also serves those who wish to challenge those at the top and have become aware of the methodology that those at the top have used and developed over centuries to generate the darkness in intense and massive yields. So, for a long time, millions of innocent children on your planet have been demised in this way, have been ended through this ritualized suffering to extract the darkness that it generates. Also, the darkness is very different to the light. The darkness requires hierarchy. The darkness requires strata. This is how the darkness operates, because the darkness is service to self, whereas the light is service to others. So as a being becomes more polarized to the light, purging the darkness, and it is a purging because each being that incarnates from the light and is born as a being completely of the light. And it is over time that they are toxified by the darkness, because the light incarnates. Beings end this life, they return to the light, and then they incarnate from the light. So the light continues as an energy through incarnation. But the darkness does not have an incarnation cycle. The darkness is the illusion, is the falsity, is the polarity, the shadow of the light. And because it is the illusion, it is not possible for the darkness to cross over and to be incarnated again. The darkness can only continue itself through transmission, through toxification. And so the darkness acts to continue itself by infecting generation after generation with itself, so that its continuation is ensured. And those that are steeped in darkness act in the best interests of themselves. It is a modality congruent with service to self, whereas the light is service to others. So the light is benevolence, and the light, not requiring hierarchy, and is a benevolent giving. It is an expression of abundance. So any being, when they polarize to the light, can access infinite wisdom realm. They can be receivers, antennas for divine wisdom, even if they are just an average person living an average life. If they polarize to the light, if they spend time in meditation to contemplate their infinity, to understand their light within, and to behave in a way which is expressive of that light through love and empathy across all fields of consciousness, then they can access a genius which they can use to create a joyful, prosperous, amazing life. The darkness, however, does not have this benevolence where it has a willingness to share this intelligence. The darkness instead has those who have more information, and yet those who have yet more information, yet more information. And those who have information at each level are not willing to give the information to those who are at a lower level unless they receive something in return, because they are service to self. They will not give the guidance, they will not give the product of their dark intellect to those underneath unless they receive something in return, because they are selfish, not selfless. So there must be an exchange, there must be a payment. So those on planet Earth who are most steeped in darkness, at the very pinnacle, and over for centuries have developed this art of generating darkness, they do not receive their guidance from the Divine One. Whereas where any average person, through their willingness to integrate into the light, purge the darkness, can access wisdom in that way. For those steeped in darkness, if they wish to receive a guidance which is extra-dimensional in nature, which is beyond their human capacities to understand, to get a guidance from a profoundly elevated intellect, because darkness is not a wisdom field, it is an intellect field. And the human mind is a finite instrument. And so those that wish to stay at the very top in the earth field, for them to receive guidance which is reflective of an intellect that gives them advantage over all those that wish to compete and usurp them, that they must get that guidance from an otherworldly intellect, from an intellect which is not originating from the earth human field, from a dark intellect which is superior to anything that is possible in the context of what it means to be a human being at this time. And so, to turn a phrase, they summon the demon. And the demon will not come unless there is something in it for them, because they are service to self. There is the hierarchy. They will not willingly give of their guidance for nothing, because they do not operate from a paradigm of benevolence. They do not receive satisfaction from seeing those who seek their help to prosper with no return for themselves. So when we say summon the demon, we don't mean this in the way of horror fiction, of the hell beings. This is not how we mean it. We mean there are beings that exist within the realm of existence that are as real and tangible, although they may be interdimensional. They are actual entities that exist in some context of existence within possibility. So we call them the demon so that it gives you an imagery of the energy they maintain. But they are just a being as you are a being. So those that are at the very pinnacle, for them to receive their guidance of a darker intellect, superior to anything which is possible, so they can maintain the advantage over their competitors, they summon the demon. They summon these other entities, these interdimensional, otherworldly entities, who are masters of darkness and are a being from a species of beings which have a superior intellect in comparison to the human being. And they are willing to offer their guidance in return for an offering. And that offering is darkness. Because just as the dark beings on your planet utilize darkness as a power, so do these beings who are summoned to offer their dark intellect. They also use darkness as a resource, as a form of their power to fortify whatever it is they are doing and wherever they are, the life they live. And so, this is yet another way that the suffering of innocence is used by those at the very top to further maintain and consolidate their power, authority and wealth. So this industry, which provides children so that they can be horrendously made to suffer as a source of dark energy harvest, is for these people who are at the very top to maintain their position, but also as offering to the dark entities which are summoned to provide the guidance. This is a global industry on your planet. And these, what we have described, are the two main ways that they are used to generate, the two main reasons that the innocent, the young and innocent, are used to generate this darkness. We appreciate this is a very unpleasant image. However, the point that we tell you this is to create this disparity between how most see the world and how the world actually is. We wish to illustrate to you the absolute contrivance of the narrative of the false matrix in which you and all other humans in the lower strata have lived for a very long time. How the world actually is and how the world is projected through these mechanisms that they control in the ways that communities are plugged into this system. The reality versus the projected false reality are very, very, very different. They are so different that this is a source of their ability to remain unknown, because it is literally incomprehensible. It is literally so disparate from what has been engineered as a story, as a false narrative for all people across the planet plugged into this system have been led to believe. The truth is considered, to many when they hear it, a ridiculous fantasy. There is no way this could be true. It is very literally incomprehensible. However, a new age is dawning. Cracks are beginning to appear. And this false matrix, which has existed for a very long time, is in advanced stages of collapse. Even though, right at this time, when you look around, you still see much expression of darkness. Understand there is still a lag. So the ways of darkness have momentum. They have been systemically entrenched into societies, countries, nations, communities. And so what you see is not truly reflective of the energetic state of your planet and of the Earth human species. Still, what is yet unknown is what will the new Earth paradigm look like. And while this is being conceived of, there is a continuation within the systems which are already in place, which have been implemented, systemically entrenched into the global community to maintain this two-strated system. So, there was a time when this two-strated system was very reflective of the energetic state on planet Earth. It was a very direct metaphor of the state of awareness and energetic expression in the human field. However, this is no longer the case. And so beneath the level of manifestation, where you have still these entrenched systems which create poverty and suffering and so on, there is a bubbling. There is a percolating of energy underneath. And this percolation of energy is creating disruption. It is a realignment of the geometry. This thin layer, which acts as a template between the non-physical and the physical. There is a template layer, a geometric layer. And so the physical world manifests in accordance to the geometric layer. This geometric layer, which could be called sacred geometry, is the template on which everything manifests. So, it is not the manifestation of the physical world which is the core of the appearance of reality on your planet. It is in fact this geometric layer. This is consistent across reality. This geometric layer, the sacred geometry, is beginning to shift because the sacred geometry is reflective of the energetic state of humanity. As humanity becomes more awakened to the light, this geometric layer is beginning to shift and change. And as it shifts and changes, that which has been manifested on it in accordance with how this blueprint looked no longer have this geometric foundation on which to stand. And so there will be an inevitable crumbling. So already this geometric layer has shifted sufficiently that those structures which are manifest on top in accordance with the blueprint are coming to an end. It is just catching up on the lag. So even though it still appears to be darkness in volumes which is unwanted, turn your attention to the geometric layer. Have a sense of feeling and make your discernment of what is occurring not on the basis of what is physically manifesting, but on the basis of the energy which is creating the turbulence as the transition, the pendulum swings from the dark side of the scale into the light side of the scale. The shift is going towards the light with a momentum which cannot be stopped. And so the inevitable collapse of the matrix is at hand. And as you look what is occurring right now in your geopolitics, the conditions between the election in the United States and also the revelation that there are some nations which are behaving in service to the darkness, for service to self, and extinguishing of the light. This is becoming more apparent. This is becoming part of the narrative. So you can see this is indicative of the collapse. Because those that have been at the top and engineered the narrative for so long, it was through their precise design that there was not even a single inkling that something was up, that things weren't what they seemed, that those who were at the upper strata were actually behaving in a way which was for the intention of our stifling, our suffocation. This is the new mindset in the earth-human field. That there are those who oppose us. That there is a unified malevolence that is pitting itself against us. And they are fundamentally dark, and we are fundamentally light. This is the dawning of realization occurring on your planet right now. And so now increasingly coming into the narrative in alternative sources. So rather than through the systems of control, when we say societies, communities, nations, plugged into the system, these control channels where information or the narrative was disseminated to the people were through these conduits which were controlled by those who place themselves in the upper strata and have, as a product of duty, accumulated all of the world's information distribution into their control to ensure that the narrative is not polluted by anything other than their message. However, now there is an explosion of alternatives. There are people on your planet who seek the truth to satisfy their own insatiable desire to know what is so. No longer are they willing to be confused by the narrative. Their desire for truth has become so profound that they will go to extreme lengths to discover what the truth is, and then, with no agenda other than to serve the light, to serve the truth, disseminate it to all those who also share this feeling of awakening into a new reality, to realizing that the world is not as it seems. So, this false matrix is in its final days. It is in its final stages. And the final blow to their system, from which they will never recover, is when these methods of disseminating their narrative are exposed for all to see in a way which is undeniable, that they are false and they are not about the dissemination of truth, but about dissemination of falsity to maintain the power of those that own these methods of information dissemination. And bundled in this exposure will be the leaders who have acted in coordination with these disseminators of false information to put themselves forward as one of the people, to represent the people, but actually serving those who are in the upper strata through being as misrepresentative of themselves as the media has been of the truth. This is a very amazing time, not only on your planet, but in all existence. It is a mass awakening of billions of individual consciousnesses, which in the timescape of the cosmos is occurring in an instant. This is truly an epic and significant moment in all of existence. And so there are so many which are watching and have been watching for a very long time, who are cheering on the light, because they are beings polarized to the light, who carry no darkness at all. And the birth of the light into realization of itself is at the center of their purpose. And so they cheer on the light as it gathers awareness and realization within each individual, which is choosing to unplug from the system and to turn their eyes in a direction which peers through the haze which has been deliberately created through the opaqueness and the secrecy of the darkness. And so this is synonymous with those that are observing, with rooting for you, cheering for you, in support of you, and they themselves in awe and admiration at your magnificence and of the resilience of the light to find its way from even the most difficult of paradigms has been observed on your planet. They are flooding you and your planet with their own light because they love you so intensely and are excited for your arrival into the new paradigm where you will become less alien to them and more brethren to them, more kin to them. When each human that is swept up in this change transcends the old earth-human paradigm to be beings expressive of the light in a similar way to they are. They await your arrival into the family. We love you. We thank you for choosing to be incarnated into the earth human experience, to have the courage and the willingness to participate in what has been a very difficult project for the betterment of all by the establishment of new precedent of what is possible for the light, to provide a lesson and now a future opportunity for other beings to be born into similar circumstances so they can go through this same gauntlet of multiple incarnations while steeped in darkness to arrive at the moment of explosion into the light and remembering, reconnecting with the beauty inherent to each consciousness incarnated from the light. We thank you. They thank you. With love and admiration, we bid you farewell.